Hey guys, Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the things that you guys have been asking for quite a long time now, and that is 3D compositing within After Effects and Cinema 4D. Now, with the new release of After Effects CC comes Cineware, and a lot of you guys have been asking about that as well. So in this tutorial, we'll cover two things, so I guess two birds with one stone. We'll talk about 3D compositing with Cinema 4D, as well as using Cineware and stuff like that. So if you aren't familiar with Cineware, I did a tutorial on that a little bit earlier, so go ahead and check that out. That video will be in the post down below, so check that out. But in this tutorial, we're just going to breeze through and run through it and take a look at how to, I guess, place an object within a scene using Cinema 4D, Cineware, and After Effects. And this will work with pretty much any version of Cinema 4D, but you'll probably want After Effects CC for Cineware purposes, unless you want to use different render paths and stuff like that. So definitely follow along, check it out, and this should be a good tutorial here. So let's take a look at what we're going to be creating today. So essentially we are placing an object within our shot, our footage here, and I shot this by myself on an edge here. We're just going to place some 3D text on here, but of course this can be a road, a bridge, whatever you want. This could be anything, and instead of 3D text you can place any object you want. So let's go and take a look at how to set this up within After Effects and Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and minimize this and create a new project in After Effects. So we'll go to File, New, and we will create a new project. And we will go ahead and save this project. So file, save as, and we'll save it. And I'll make a new folder. We'll call this tutorial demo, and we'll call this project file tutorial. And let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to import our clip. So I'm going to import it. I actually have the clip right here. Open it up. And I'll just drag our footage into the new comp button here. And that will create a new composition with the same settings as our footage. And this is just footage that I shot on an edge with 24-70 f2.8. So we have this really nice shallow depth of field. So the first thing we need to do is we need to track the shot to build a virtual camera to kind of match and simulate the actual camera that we shot it with here. So let's go ahead and right click on the footage, and we will go to track camera. And right after that, it's going to analyze this footage here, and it's going to create a virtual camera mimicking the same movements as the camera that we shot it with, or at least try to. And this will take a little while. As you can see here, we have 358 frames, and it's about 6%. It also gives you a time remaining about 1 minute left. So go ahead and just let it track. So After Effects finished tracking our shot. As you can see, we have some track points stuck onto our footage here, and this is good. So we're going to use these track points and transfer this virtual camera data into Cinema 4D so we can use. So first thing we need to do is we need to define where the ground plane is, and this will help you a lot tremendously in Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and decide where we're going to place our text. So I'm going to go to full res here and see kind of where things are in focus. So right around here is where I kind of want to place the text, and you just kind of be you have to be so accurate. So we want to find track points here that kind of define the ground plane. So right around here, this is a pretty good representation of the perspective and where the ground surface is. So we'll click here and select 3 track points here. You can also click and drag and select render points or track points here, but I'm going to select these 3. Right click. Now, one of the things that drove me insane when I first did this was trying to match the camera, the angle, the perspective in Cinema 4D with After Effects. After Effects has a different 0 point or origin than Cinema 4D. In Cinema 4D, the origin is actually in the center, whereas in After Effects, the origin is actually the top left-hand corner here. So this gave a lot of problems for me, and it was very difficult to kind of line things up and make things seem right, I guess. So I guess I was kind of doing it the old-fashioned way, trying to adjust my track points in Cinema 4D to make it more of a workable environment, to kind of convert things together to make it more workable in Cinema 4D. And little did I know that this feature existed in After Effects. So this will save you a lot of time here. So the set ground plane origin, I kind of just mislooked, but if you click this right here, this would definitely make your life a lot easier in Cinema 4D. There's no, adjusting or tweaking or, rearranging the grid and all that stuff in Cinema 4D. Just set this right here, set ground plane and origin. And now the origin in Cinema 4D won't be in the center, it'll actually be right here. So when you create an object, it will appear right here instead of up here, or somewhere else in Z space. It's very, very hard to visualize 3D space with just this plain 2D image here. So set that as the ground plane, then create a solid and camera, and this will create a solid right here where we want the text to be, as well as our virtual camera. Now, we're not going to use this camera necessarily in After Effects for this particular case, but we will use it for Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to export all this data here into Cinema 4D. So with the new After Effects CC, you have something called Cineware, and you can also go to File, Export, and go to Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter. Now, Maxon does have a separate plugin for this, but now it's actually built in within After Effects, so you don't have to download it anymore. If you want to check it out, the link will be in the post down below. So I'm going to go to Export, go to Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter, and now it's going to prompt us to save the Cinema 4D project. So I'm going to call this one Tutorial Project, hit save, and now we have to actually open it up in Cinema 4D. So the only way to do that in Cinema 4D Lite is to actually import it into After Effects. So we'll go to Tutorial Demo and import the tutorial project we just saved, hit open, and now we have to drag it into our composition here. So here we have our data. So to open it, we can go to Edit and go to Edit Original and make sure that your Cinema 4D project is selected, and that will open up Cinema 4D Lite. And now, as you can see in the null in Cinema 4D, we have our solid here that we created in After Effects, same color. We also have our virtual tracked camera. So this is going to imitate the movement that we did on the camera that we shot it with, as well as the virtual camera in After Effects. So this is very, very useful here. But as you can see, we don't really have any reference, right? All we have is this little square we want to create our text, but we don't have any background. So one thing you can do is actually import a reference image. So I'm going to hop back into After Effects, and I want to find a good reference image. So right around, I think right here would be a good reference image here, around frame 162. I'm going to, first of all, shut off the Cineware layer, shut off the track solid, and just use this image here. So make sure it's set at full res. We'll go to Composition, we'll go Save Frame As, and we'll go to File. And then, we'll save it as a Photoshop file, that's fine. We'll go to Output 2, and we'll save this particular image into the tutorial demo folder. We'll call this one reference image. Now, you can also use a video for your reference background. But in this case, I think that a still image is fine for this particular case. But if you want to set up a background video as reference in Cinema 4D, it is possible. I'll probably cover that in a bit. So we'll hit render. So now we have our reference image. So let's go ahead and hop into Cinema 4D again and create a new material. We'll call this one reference background. We'll go to the color channel, we'll go to texture and go load image, and then we'll select our reference image that we just rendered out. Hit OK and close that out. We'll create a new background object, and then we'll drag the texture onto the background. So now we have our reference image in the background, but we're not in the right frame here. So let's go back into After Effects, and this reference image is actually frame 162. So let's go ahead and go back to Cinema and go to frame 162. So this is the correct place for Cineware at this particular reference image here. So 162 is the magic number. And of course, you can use video as your background reference as well. So if you do that, go to the material here. We'll hop into the texture. We'll go to animation and make sure that timing is exact frame. And make sure you hit calculate, and that will calculate all the frames. So you have to use an image sequence, not an actual video, but that will essentially do the same thing. So I'm gonna go back to exact second here. So now we have our stuff here. Let's go ahead and place an object within the scene first. So we'll delete the solid that we created in After Effects, and we'll just place a cube in there, and we'll scale it up 500, 500, 500 centimeters, and we'll hit save. Go back into After Effects, and as you can see, our cube shows up, and it's going to use the Cinema 4D camera, which is our tracked camera. And as you can see, we have our cube actually locked down, stuck onto our little ground here. And this is perfect. So now we know that it is actually working. Let's go back to frame 162 and go ahead and add in our text. So I'm going to delete this cube. I'm going to create a text spline, and I'm going to type in Cineware. I'm also going to change the font to something a little bit more interesting. So this font here. We will definitely increase the height. And then we will also go and select the extrude NURBS and drag the text spline onto the extrude NURB. And we will go ahead and go to the extrude NURBS and increase the movement to extrude it. So now we have something like this. It's not quite straight because we selected kind of a bad track point, but that's no problem. We can just rotate it here. So with a little bit of adjustment in the rotation, you can get it to kind of look right. And again, the background isn't moving because, again, this is a reference image. So we're just going to use 162 as our reference. So we're working this particular frame here. Maybe we can extrude it just a little bit more. We'll go to the object, maybe extrude it a little bit. We'll add a fillet cap or fillet cap, and we will increase the radius to about 13 for the front and back, and then change the steps to about 10 to kind of smooth it out a little bit. So now we have some smooth text, and then we can apply a new material to it. We will call this 3D text. We'll drag the material onto the 3D text. It will hop into the editor here, and we will maybe make it kind of a white color. Maybe we'll add some reflections. Now for this particular tutorial, I'm not going to be creating a spherical reflection map for this particular tutorial. But if you're on location, definitely create a spherical reflection map, a panorama, so that you can use it as a reflection map or a sky for this particular case. But I think we're just gonna do away with the reflections here. So we'll just add some very subtle reflections, and then we'll go to the specular. Maybe we'll increase the height to give it some shine, decrease the width a little bit, and then we'll close out of that and do a quick render. So that's looking like that. And it's looking like crap because we don't have any lights on there. So let's try to match the lighting as best we can in Cinema. So we'll go ahead and create a new light. And this one will be an Omni light, and we'll create shadow maps soft. And that will create some nice quick soft shadows. We'll bring the light up here. We'll place it up here. Now, one thing to note is that the camera here has tons and tons of keyframes. So it doesn't matter if we move around, do something weird. If you just move back, it's going to pretty much be untouched because it's all keyframes. As long as you don't have, auto keyframes turned on or anything like that, this should be good. You can move around freely and just move back, and it should snap back into place. So nothing to worry here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, select our light, and just kind of pull it up to match where the sun would kind of be at this particular time in this particular shot. So kind of raise it up a little bit. We'll definitely make this kind of a warmer light to tint it kind of a orange color. We'll also duplicate it and maybe drag it over here because it does kind of pan to the side, so we want to have that. And maybe we'll set it to around 70%, and we'll snap back into place. So move a little bit, move back, and do a quick render, and you can see that we have some pretty hard shadows in the back. So you can either do that, create another light and fix that, or we'll just move this kind of right here, move this light up a little bit. Now this light here, I don't want to cast any shadows, so we'll set it to none for shadows, and we'll just snap back into place and take a look at this. That's looking a little bit better. Maybe we can increase the brightness to 90%, hit render. That's okay. Maybe we can push it back just a little bit more to get rid of the back shadow. Go back in here, hit render. And that's looking a lot better, so we'll just move back into place, and that's looking doable. So right now we're missing a lot of shadows here. The text doesn't really look composited in at all, so we need to create some ground shadows, and for that we need a shadow catcher. So I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to create a new plane, and we'll definitely scale this thing up pretty wide. And then we'll definitely increase the height and just kind of push it back here. And this plane is not going to do anything except capture our shadows, and we will remove the plane in After Effects. So we'll just move it down a little bit. It's kind of touching our text, so let's move it down. You can be more exact in the perspective view. So right now we just have a plane in here, and as you can see, it's already catching some shadows from the lights. So if we go to the extrude NURBS, or actually we can go to the light here, this light here, and go to shadow. Maybe we can increase the density to around 150% just to give darker shadows. So now you start seeing the shadows. And then now that we have the plane, we can turn on ambient occlusion. So we can go to the effect, ambient occlusion. And if you have no idea what I'm doing right now, definitely look back in previous tutorials. I'll have more information on what I'm doing. But for now, I just want to get this a little bit done. So ambient occlusion. So now we have darker spots between the plane and the text here. So now we're really getting shadows. This is looking really, really nice. And I think let's go ahead and preview this in After Effects. So let's go ahead and set this up. So right now we have our text, and the text is the only thing we want to see really, and we don't want to see the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an object buffer to this particular text here. So I'm going to go to right click, Cinema 4D tags, go to Compositing, go to Object Buffer, and turn on Object Buffer number 1. So our text is going to be an object buffer, and this is going to create a matte for us in After Effects to matte everything out except the text. And then, so now, let's go ahead and go to the render settings. We'll add Multipass, so we can use these things in After Effects. Right click, we'll select Shadow Pass, so just the shadows here. We want Ambient Occlusion Pass, and then we also want possibly a Depth Pass later on, but we'll go ahead and see where we are. So I think that's looking pretty good. So we'll close that. We'll hit save in Cinema 4D to save the changes that we did and hop back into After Effects. So now After Effects updated with our new stuff here. We're in software mode, so let's go ahead and switch that to standard final. And that's going to show us what we have. And as you can see, it kind of takes a little bit to render. We are rendering at 1080p at full res. So this is what our text is looking like, and it's looking pretty decent, except we have this ugly plane in here. And this is where our object buffer is going to come in handy. So I'm going to, first of all, name this 3D text. I'm going to duplicate it to create 2 layers of Cineware. I'm going to call this one, I guess, object matte. And if we go into the multipass in Cinema 4D, we can go to enable Cinema 4D multipass and select our multipass. So now it's asking us, okay, what multipass do you want to display for this layer? And we want to display the object buffer. As you can see, we don't really have it, and because we forgot to set it up in the settings. So back in Cinema 4D, we forgot to add the object buffer into the multipass here. So right click, we'll add object buffer. Make sure it's grouped to 1 because our object buffer is set to 1. Hit save. Back in After Effects, we'll go back and change the multipass and change it from RGBA image, which is I guess our beauty pass, to object buffer. And that will display our object buffer number 1. So this is what our object buffer looks like. Essentially, it is a matte of just our text because we added the object buffer to our text. So now we're getting a matte just for our text. We're going to go into the track mattes here. If you don't see it, just toggle switches / modes. Make sure that the 3D text is below the object matte. We'll go to the 3D text and set the track matte from no track matte to Luma matte. So it's going to use the white values as positive, the black values as negative values. That's how I kind of remember it. And you'll see what it does here. So now it cuts everything out except for our text. So now we just have our text, nothing else. And so I'm going to duplicate the object matte, Control Command D, turn it on. Now this time we don't want our object buffer. This time we want something else. So we'll go to the set multipass, and instead of object buffer, we want to see our ambient occlusion. And this is going to be a matte of just, or not necessarily a matte, this is going to be our ambient occlusion only. So this is our shadows here. We can change the transfer mode from normal to multiply, and that will get rid of the white. So now we have our ambient occlusion and our text in there. We'll call this AO for ambient occlusion, and then we'll duplicate it one more time, and this will be our shadows. Go to set multipass and select our shadows. So doing it this way, we have more control over individual aspects. We can color correct and color grade the shadows individually. We can color correct and make modifications to the ambient occlusion separately, as well as our 3D text. And our object mat matted out our text so we don't see our plane. So that's what it does here. Very, very handy. And this is the beauty of Cineware, is that you can access all these multipass without rendering anything. You can go back into Cinema 4D and make modifications, and it still updates. So this is the beauty of Cineware. It's kind of like Adobe's Dynamic Link, except on steroids. You have more options between Cinema 4D and After Effects. So this is really, really cool, and this is already looking pretty great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some quick color correction, color grading, and see where we are. So I'm going to select our text here, and I will definitely go to color correction. We'll apply curves, and we will maybe brighten the shadows up a little bit. Kind of like that. And then maybe we'll tint it a little warmer and maybe decrease the blues a little bit. Now I already have an idea of what I'm going to do, so that's why I'm color correcting it already like this. But usually you would want to match your text to your shot first and then do overall color correction. So let's go ahead and color correct and color grade our shot first. So we'll apply curves, we'll add some contrast here, and then we'll definitely warm the shot up. Now I shot this with a DSLR using a flat profile, so it looks kind of washed out, but it gives us a lot more room to color correct and color grade here. So now we made the shot a lot more warmer. As you can see, our text kind of matches that, something like that. And then we will go into the ambient occlusions. We will apply a curves effect, and the shadows are currently black right now, but as you can see in the shot, the shadows are kind of a bluish, warmish color as well. I don't know how that makes sense, but it's definitely not black. So maybe we can warm up the shadows, increase the reds, decrease the blues a little bit. We'll copy and paste that into our original shadows here, and then now we can also go to the RGB. We can also increase the shadows like that, make it more intense, or line it up. So it's very, very useful. We can go to the shadows here, maybe we can decrease the reds a little bit. So it's very, very useful. And then if we do a quick RAM preview, we'll set the resolution to half and just do a quick RAM preview. So that's looking pretty decent. Of course, if you wanted to make it a little bit more accurate, definitely add a reflection map, or definitely use a spherical image for the reflections. So you can see it doesn't really reflect our scene, but it should be well enough. In the original demonstration, I didn't use a spherical map for reflections or anything like that. So this is looking pretty decent. I think it'll look a lot better once we do some final color correction. That did take a little while to RAM preview. It took about 3 to 4 seconds per frame, so that was a little bit slow. But so just give you guys a heads up on how fast Cineware renders. It renders pretty fast considering it is within After Effects and you're not rendering out in Cinema 4D. So pretty cool, but just want to give you a heads up on how fast that is. I'm gonna do a quick adjustment layer, and we'll call this CC. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sharpen to this thing. So apply sharpen. Again, this is rendered using a flat profile, so the sharpness is turned all the way down for the shot. So I'm going to set it to around maybe 6, and we'll definitely apply a fast blur to the 3D text here. Now we're not going to do it with the shadows because I think that they're already soft enough, but I do want to add a fast blur to make it a little bit less sharp here because our footage is a little bit soft compared to this harsh edge. So I'm going to change the fast blur to around 2 pixels, repeat edge pixels, And that will just smooth the corners out a little bit here. Maybe 3. And then back to the CC adjustment layer, we'll add an effect. We will apply Magic Bullet Mojo for really quick color correction, or color grading, I should say. And we'll play around with that. Now, one thing really cool about Cineware is that it only has to render once, and then once it renders, it doesn't need to render again every single time you mess around with a particular adjustment layer or anything like that. So the 3D part, the Cineware part, is actually already rendered, so we can just move the slider around and it moves around just fine. It's not re-rendering the whole thing again, so that's pretty smart of Cineware to kind of cache all that stuff. So I'm going to maybe change the balance to make it a little bit warmer, and then maybe decrease the punch, and then I will apply effect. We'll apply looks, and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll just apply a vignette. I like to use vignettes in Magic Bullet looks for some reason, so we'll apply that. We will increase the radius a little bit, and then we will move this down a little bit, and then we will hit OK. Add a really soft vignette. We'll add one more curves adjustment to this, kind of brighten it up a little bit, and then add some of that darkness back in. Now, one thing I thought that I can get away with in this tutorial was not create the depth of field. As you can see, our shot has quite a bit of depth of field, some shallow depth of field, and you kind of want to imitate that. So first of all, the perspective is a little bit wrong for the text, so we'll go back into Cinema 4D and fix that. So select our text here, the extrude NURBS actually. We'll go into the coordinates, and I just want to rotate it just a little bit more this way. And then we will go into the render settings, and we'll apply another multipass, and we'll add a depth pass here at the bottom. And we will zoom out, and let's go ahead and find our camera. So let's select our camera, and I'm going to go into detail and make sure that we have the depth of field map rear blur turned on. And then I want to uncheck our camera here, so we're not actually viewing it through the camera, so we can actually see the camera. So we'll just reset it. So here we see our actual camera here, and what I want to do is I want to take this focus point and just click on it, move it right before our text happens. So I want the camera to focus right in front of the text, and then we want to take the back point here and just focus it right after the text here. So we just want this very, very narrow focus area here, similar to what we have in the shot. So if we turn on the camera once again, and then we hit render, you see that there's no difference, but you'll see it in the multipass. So I'm going to go back into After Effects, hit save, make sure you hit save, hop back into After Effects, and you shouldn't see any difference here, except the fact that we did rotate the text a little bit. So we have that, and then we can duplicate another Cineware layer, and we'll just call this one Depth Pass. We'll go and delete the curves adjustment, and we want to show the depth pass. So we'll select Set Multipass. We'll select the depth pass, and this is going to be black and white. Right now it looks kind of funny because we have the blade mode set to multiply. We'll set it back to normal. So right now we have, again, a map. So white is positive value and black is a negative value, and so the black area is going to be in focus, but the white areas are going to be blurred. So we'll use that on our 3D text here. So we'll shut up the depth pass. We don't need to see it. It's just going to be a reference for our blur plugin. So I'm going to use an effect called Frischluft, I guess depth of field. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's depth of field here. It's a paid plugin, external plugin, but you can use camera lens blur if you want. There's different ways to do it. I think this is the best plugin for this particular case. So I'm going to select our depth layer. That's going to be our depth pass. And you don't see anything, but once we turn on the radius to around 50 or so, you can kind of see the blur. I'm going to select our depth, which is right around here. I want the bottom of the text to be kind of in focus. And this is probably not the best way to do it, just because this 3D text here cannot fully be blurred because it is matte to our object matte here. So this 3D text can only be displayed wherever the matte is, and we're trying to blur it out, but of course it's being restricted by the matte. So again, this is not the best way to do it. You could pre-compose, you can also blur the matte out to compensate. There's many ways to do it, but I think this is just the quickest way to do it, unless you want to manually just blur it out using an adjustment layer and tracking that and masking that out. But just by kind of doing that, it kind of just softens the edges and makes it blend in just a little bit better than without it here. So just play around with the select depth, and you can achieve a pretty interesting result. So now that we have that done, I think that's pretty much it. Of course, you can tweak the lighting a little bit better. I pretty much lit the scene up in about a minute, and I didn't really spend any time with the texture. So if you want to texture your text, texture your objects, and light it better, definitely do so. This is just a very quick demonstration on how to kind of get the tracking data into Cinema 4D, how to slap on an object in there, and do some quick color correction, color grading to kind of match your object into the scene here. So this is what we have. So this is what we have here. We have our 3D text tracked onto our shot. It's sticking onto the ground. We have some pretty interesting ambient occlusion shadows as well as shadows in the back here. And we have, just our overall object within our scene. Of course, you can use a lot more work on the texture, the lighting, and the color correction. Play around with the shadows, play around with the different opacities and stuff like that, and add some depth of field and stuff like that. But overall, this is how you kind of take tracking data within After Effects, bring it into Cinema 4D, work on it there, add your object in, use Cineware, use different types of multipasses straight from After Effects and Cineware, and overall just try to composite things into the scene. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit about Cineware, how to use it, and how to use Cinema 4D in conjunction with After Effects using the new Cineware plugin. So hopefully that kind of helped you out a little bit. If you want to learn more about Cineware, check out my overview video. Again, the link will be in the post down below, so definitely check that out. So if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll be sure to answer them as fast as I can. But again, my name is Vincent Nguyen from thecreativedojo.net, and that's pretty much it for the tutorial. So I'll see you guys next time in the next tutorial.